What's going on, GBA type people? It's Jar and Aster back with week. Is this 7 already, Aster? Or is this 6? This is 6.
This is 6.
All right, so week 6 power rankings, and me and Aster, I gotta say, Aster, we're getting pretty good at this. We're pretty in sync now. We got this down, but I believe you're gonna kick it off for us.
Except for which week it is, because you completely butchered that. But no shocker here, guys. At number 16, of course, we have Old Man Tup. Just quickly, I want to say I feel like I've heard not a great matchup from Tup one too many times this season when he leads, and I think he knows he deserves the 16th position. I kind of wrote down this note before I heard the end of his video because he has to do some soul searching. He has to find himself and make sure he gets back into this season, because we've seen great things from Tup in the past, and I know he's got it in him, but he's just not having a great season. My one question is, why did Tangrowth not come to this game? If he had no Keldeo switch-in to begin with, you know, if Blissey is your Keldeo switch-in, you're probably not going to have a bueno match, as he would say. Now, talking about the end of the game real quick, I do have to give Tup mad props for knocking exactly the sequence of plays that he had to make to win this game. And while it may not seem like that first Willow miss from Chandelure on the Mandibuzz mattered, it actually did. And quite a bit, because it meant that Tup got up a sub before taking damage if that connected. And that meant that playing out the end game with 1 to 2 spit F drops from Energy Ball as he was trying to get would have won him the timer stall war. But thus are Wi-Fi battles. I just don't know how I felt, again, about bringing Blissey over Tangrowth. With 0 Keldeo checks and 0 Lando checks, it made sense this game. So it's very tough.
Yeah, I have to agree with a lot of what you said, Ash. See, like you said, Tangrowth really should have come to this game. Like, the one thing I have on Tup's prep is Keldeo was just going to demolish him with the team he brought. He had some moments of good, like, I liked the Shukanito King. That was very smart based on how Duncan's been playing his Landorus as a revenge killer mainly. I actually thought Steelix was a pretty solid bring versus Duncan's team, because he does have things like the Alolan Ninetales, and it can potentially take a hit from his Weavile and a few other his physical attackers. But yeah, the big thing for me is Focus Blast Blissey was cool, but I did not like that bring, because you basically are inviting a Loloak to just come and take advantage of you with that set. Duncan brought with Envy's help a sub-focus punch of Loloak, and if he ever would have gotten a sub up versus Tup's team, it was getting at least 2 kills, and the Blissey would have been set up fodder for that thing, and I thought that was very, very risky. I know you want to hit the Weavile hard, but Blissey gets T-Wave. It can cripple a Weavile, break its substitute with Seismic Toss potentially. I know Wish Passing is very, very good in format, especially in my opinion, but I don't know if it was worth it for the Focus Blast this week. The Shandy was interesting, because I understand you need the Willow to not have a sub broken by the Mandibuzz, but the one thing you have to know is you're not going to beat a Mandibuzz without Toxic somewhere on your team. And I think that maybe the Shandy could have been sub-Toxic and stalled. The Mandibuzz would not have been able to stall him out in the late game, as he could have been fast subs, and then he could have just hexed it down once it was really low. Actually, I don't know if that would have worked as well.
He did have Toxic on his team. It was on the Steelix, but he never got it off.
Yeah. Mandibuzz is an amazing mon for teams to lean on. I said it to Duncan a while ago. He didn't believe me, but Mandibuzz is so bulky. It doesn't even have like an uber amount of resist. It definitely has some, but Mandibuzz's strength comes from just its sheer HP and defense stats, and you're not beating that thing with Will-O-Wisp after the nerf. Overall, though, this game, from the beginning, I knew it was going to go against Tup. How fast it went, based on the team Tup had brought. Because Tup brought a lot of walls, and this game ended up being played like hyper offense for the first 16 turns. Mons were dropping left and right, and then we got to see 30 minutes of a Chandelure versus a Mandibuzz in the end.
Crazy.
That ultimately ended with a Mandibuzz winning based on its HP stat compared to Chandelure's. But yeah, I just knew from there with Keldeo he was going to be able to break him. You say you didn't understand why Tangrowth didn't come. I don't really understand why Slowking didn't come. Because Slowking, if you look at the team Duncan brought, what wanted to take a Scald from Slowking? And you could have just run Toxic on it, been Colberberry, and you dealt with everything. Nothing on Duncan's team wanted to switch into a Scald from a Slowking. Whack gets no recovery. Weavile doesn't want to be burned. Landorus does not want to be burned. You Toxic the Mandibuzz. You deal with a lot of his team with that set. So I think the Regen Core was the wall core he should have brought this week. I completely agree with you. A Spadef Tangrowth, physically defensive Colberberry Slowking, I thought would have put in a lot of work in my opinion.
Either or, yeah.
But yeah, So that's all the notes I have on Tup. I do want to see him turn it around because, like Aster said, we have seen great things from Tup in the past, and we know he can do better. We just need to see a few of that little more. I don't know if it's the innovation that's his issue. I think it's more the play and just the little things he can alter in prep to maybe give himself a bit more of a fighting chance. But we are going to move on. Next, as we always do, Steve, aka BattlerX, the whole organization we have at number 15. BattlerX, you were so close to picking up your second win without any hacks. Unfortunately, through absolutely no supernatural or psychic coach interference, luck just wasn't on your side this game. I have no idea why. Like I said, there was no interference whatsoever from anything else, but unfortunate. On his prep, Combine Crest is good. I liked Sub because he does have things like the Amoonguss, which can run Clear Smog, and Geo does have a lot of passive Mons on his team. He's got the Ferrothorn, he's got the Amoonguss. You can definitely take advantage of Mons like that. But I didn't like the Xurkitree. I know Rhyperior didn't come, but Xurkitree destroys Geo's team just by either Volt Switching or clicking the right move. So I think Steve, what he should have done is packed. I know Rhyperior didn't come. I still think packing HP Grass or Water on that set is the right move, because if it did, your Zerk was putting in no work, and a Mon that went from destroying Geo's team becomes absolutely useless. You weren't doing that much damage to a Spadef Amoonguss anyway with an HP Fire. You're not 2-hit KOing it, so I didn't understand that. But the biggest thing is, why was that Crest not Psyshock? Geo has a Finny, which can run Calm Mind. Not only that, Finny is much bulkier on the Spadef side. When you bring a Calm Mind Psychic type, it should always be Psyshock, because you beat other Calm Mind users no matter what. The hacks would not have mattered if he would have been Psyshock this game. So it's hard to critique his play, because he did make some good plays. X gave it to him at good times and didn't work for him at other times. I think he should have definitely kept the momentum with Xurkitree. No reason to overpredict on the Finny and click Thunderbolt. That was not staying in on a Xurkitree. So I think if you just have an electric type, because this is when electric types are so good in format, when they outspeed your opponent's entire team and there is nothing to catch a Volt Switch. That's when you just spam that Volt Switch, and that's when fast electric types are at the top of their game, and that's why they're so good in format. And I think that Steve could have taken advantage of the Amoonguss plenty with the Crest. So I think it's just play was a little bit off. The Psyshock was the biggest thing for me, and it was just like, that Xurkitree set triggered me, even though it worked. It triggered me more the fact that it did work, you know?
Yeah, no, I actually kind of feel bad for Steve, man. He had the game plan, he caught the Salamence on the Switch, he set up his Cresselia for the game, and then he gets crit with Moonblast from Finny. That was actually so unfortunate. I can't even say anything. I really thought that he had this game when he froze the Amoonguss as some revenge hacks, but no, it thawed turn 2. Which you already know only happens on Wi-Fi, not on Showdown.
Yeah.
I disagree with Psychic over Psyshock 100% on Cresselia. Though, just because you look at Geo's team, it's not just the Finny. It's Mons your Crest is going to be sweeping against all have lower Fizz Def than Spadef. Like, I kind of understand maybe the Conkeldurr, perhaps. Maybe Rhyperior, but like Gengar, Psyshock hits harder. CM Finny, Psyshock. Amoonguss, do I even have to say it? Like, how well... I like how well Steve is actually performing with this team despite its weaknesses, but again, he did lose, so welcome back to number 15, again this week, BattlerX. Moving on.
That is cold.
We have Geo and the San Francisco Giants. Geo didn't impress me this week. I'm going to be straight up. He did not impress me this week once again, which is part of the reason I lowered him back down to 14. Other than his Amoonguss, his team was very weak to Steve's. He had to make so many predictions in the mid-game, which ended up costing him his Salamence. He didn't play around the potential of sub Cresselia, which was geared to run through his team. And had the Curse Body not gone off, thanks to his lack of Bronzong, I'm pretty sure the Cresselia would have just straight gone through the entire team. I understand why Bronzong didn't come, but you're basically setting yourself up at that point to get swept by Cresselia. I don't know, man. I'm a really big fan of the Giantes. I always have been, but they're just not doing it for me right now.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Geo has shown me through this season great moments of prep and then great moments of play. Like you said, like, he does make good plays, but it's just those little things like that are throwing his entire game off, like the switch into Mentz on the Como just because you wanted to make a middle ground play. Mentz was probably his win con in this game if he could wear down the Cresselia. I did not like the Scarf Mentz personally in this matchup because I thought a Dragon Dance set posed a much bigger threat because Cress just eats Salamence hits no matter what, especially Jolly Scarf. Like, that is doing nothing to a defensive Cress. I thought the Con Mine Finny was cool, but I did not like it this matchup because of the fact Steve has a bulkier Psychic Calm Mind user who he's brought Calm Mind I think 3 times already. You will lose because Psyshock is a thing. Luckily for Geo, it wasn't a thing in this game, so he was able to win that war with a crit. But I just don't know how to evaluate Geo's play because he makes risky plays with Mons that are very important for him to win the game. He does kind of what I do, Aster. Kind of like, he risks Mons that destroy his opponent's team on plays that it's not really necessary. And Geo, I completely understand that. I do that shit all the time. It is a hard habit to break. But at some point, you just got to be like, alright, I just got to play my offensive win cons, and I'm not risking them. Like,
I think he's done that very often, honestly. I used to watch him religiously when I wasn't an analyst, and he did that a lot. Like, and it would lose him games, straight up, so...
Yeah, exactly. And so when you play risky with your offensive win cons, you're not thinking about the late game. Geo, when he's in the late game, thinks about it really well. He has a good thought process when he's in the late game, but his plays in the beginning and middle don't set him up well to be in that mindset in the late game. That's just my opinion. But I think we can move on. We've kind of evaluated Geo, but we kind of can't evaluate his play because of the crit, and, you know, we kind of know how that game would have turned out if that wouldn't have happened. But moving on to number 13, we both have Duncan Knee Deep. Duncan, I did not want to move this week because of the reason that, you know, he beat a team that still doesn't have a win in PR. And if he can ride this momentum, he definitely can move up in the power rankings. But his prep was really solid. He said MV helped him out again. He actually had 30 minutes to prep this time, so great shout out. He's getting better. But I just think that he had a lot of cool stuff that actually looked like it could have put in a lot of work for his Tup's team that he didn't utilize. Like I said, the Alolowak. You should probably switch that into Blissey. I would have, on the Alolowak, set Sped Crept and no Speed Blissey, and I would have scouted for Shadow Ball with the substitute, and if he doesn't have it, you're getting 2 kills, like I said. So I don't think he took advantage of it as well he did. I did not like Nasty Plot Ninetales in this match because he has the Blissey. I mean, it does put in work versus his other walls like the Tangrowth and Slowking like we talked about, but since the Blissey was there, I just didn't think it had the best matchup because if Blissey did come, it was not winning. And when you're playing as offensively as Duncan has, having a Mon like Mandibuzz to lean on could do so much for your team because it's so bulky, and I have to just praise the innovation of Duncan. I don't think anyone knew that Mandibuzz could be bulky Mon that you can lean on, so bringing a Mandibuzz that was defensive, great prep. I loved it. It was innovative and productive, so very good, Duncan.
On my end here, I don't even know what to say, honestly. Duncan wasted 35 minutes timer stalling, and, well, it worked out for him. He got the win. I'm only bringing him up 1 spot from last week to 13 because like I said before, I was really unimpressed with Geo's performance. Ultimately, this is just a win to count as a win. I didn't see anything that really stuck out to me other than the good play with the Mandibuzz. Yes, the Lando set was cool and it almost swept. Thanks for showing us physical dual dance Lando I, Duncan, honestly. But it was just mostly a boring game to watch for the most part, so I'll leave it there. There's not much to comment on. Like I said,
as analysts, that is a hell game to watch because you have to actually find out when Mons died, how they died. So that was just painfully dragged on.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I'm glad Tup said it was a timer stall at the end, and I watched Tup's side, but.
We do have to respect the timer stall, though. We defended Callum, we will defend Duncan the same way. He did what he needed to do to win. So.
Yeah, I will. Like I said, it's part of the game. It's the GBA rules, so he did what he needed to. But you know, it's on our end. It's just like, is this gonna end? But
there's been so many timer stalls in the GBA this season, more than I think.
More than
already.
Usual, for sure.
Yeah, more than any season like ever already, I think, because like Cooper's not even here. So that's like crazy.
Cooper's not even here. Yeah, exactly. No, it's really weird. I don't know what's going on, but anyway, that's a win for Duncan. He'll take it for sure. I'm sure he will. And like you said, hopefully he can carry the momentum into future weeks. We have still yet to see like a breakout performance from Duncan, I think, but I'm sure we'll find it at some point. Moving on to Dan, to A Drive. who we both have in the number 12 position. I don't know what it is with Dan this season. I think he's just struggling to find the right team to bring time and time again. He almost made me feel like his Clefable was his Magirna this game. You know, the Clefable without Flamethrower and Unaware to make the special attack drops mean nothing? Yeah, that one. Honestly, I don't know what to say to Dan. He just fell prey to all of Lars's offense, and there's nothing he could really do. The power-up miss hurt him like hell. It hurt him a lot. Like, I feel for him. I'll give him that. I think Terrakion might have been able to pull it back if the rocks stayed up. Dan does unfortunately fall to a 2-4 record, though, putting him at both our number 12s, but the season is not over yet. An 8-4 record could certainly put him in playoffs, so it's not done.
Yeah, this is why. This is a perfect example of why I hate Life Orb in League format. First of all, Dan played the Victini too aggressively. That thing demolished Lars because Lars does not have traditional walls, and a team without traditional walls cannot beat a Victini. So switching it in on the Magirna, trying to make that middle ground play with one of your biggest offensive win cons. The same reason that we saw Gio take a giant hit in his game versus Steve cost Dan this game. The middle ground play is not always the best play, guys. When it costs you your win cons, and in this case, Dan basically lost Victini for it because it was Life Orb. And it went from maybe being able to survive the long game, you turning out, keeping the rocks off his side of the field with the Delmise, to being dead in 2 hits no matter what. That is the difference Life Orb makes in League format, and that's why I don't like it. The Clef, like you said, very, very weird, especially is basically a free Magirna switch in. Lars was running Trick Room, which we'll get to that. I thought that was a great bring. But yeah, that I did not understand at all. The Scizor was cool because it kept it. If he would have had his Victini and have been able to keep the U-turn momentum up, he could have definitely put a big hole in Lars's team. The Pasha Berry Terrakion 252, it's the Azu counter, inside joke, but that was actually cool. The Delmise has become a point of regularity for Dan. He always seems to bring the Delmise because I think we said it in the draft analysis. He basically has to bring it every week. He's not going to bring Defog Gliscor very often, if ever, and he has Victini. So you have a Victini, you have a Fire type, who is very, very weak to rocks. Your Delmise is coming most weeks. And
yeah,
I
you
think
fall
that's
back on it a lot.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But overall, Dan wasn't playing too bad. He played aggressively with the Victini. That was the biggest thing for me. But I just think I agree with you. The Power Whip miss was absolutely crucial because I think the combination of Hacksters, because it was scarfed, plus the Terrakion, could have definitely pulled that game back for Dan. But unfortunately, we did not get to see it. I want to see him bounce back. Like you said, his season is by no means over. A lot of games left to be played. And Dan, we've seen him before turn seasons around very quickly and just go on a tear. So Dan is not out of it yet. But overall, I think we're going to move on to a player we both dropped quite a bit this week. Callum. We both have Callum at number 11. And the biggest reason for me dropping Callum is it seems like he's cold. Right now specifically. He started the season, I believe, 3-1. Now he's 3-3. And he seems to have a problem with not having the knowledge of his own team because he does use a front office, which we both have used front offices before, at least help from friends when building teams. But the biggest thing, Callum, you have to be able to know what you're bringing for specific mons. And when you have somebody else build your entire team, you lose that ability and you don't know exactly how the game is playing out in your own mind before it happens, and that is so crucial. But like I said, Callum, he's been cold, and this is power ranking, so we want to stay kind of like who is the most threatening at the moment. And honestly, at this point, Callum has not been playing very well, period. So I don't think he necessarily played bad. I did not like the Sableye set because it was Cobal setup fodder, basically. But I did think it was the right bring because nothing took Cobal well on his team at all. Callum has a very big weakness to Cobal. So I did think it was the right bring. I didn't think it was the right set. But overall, I just need to see Callum get back to where he was. And I think that all starts with him contributing a lot more to his own teams.
Callum, man, you took a huge dive this week, mate, for both of us dropping to the 11th rank. It may seem a bit harsh for a team that started off the season well, but we've said it a few times now. Your wins are against our bottom-ranked teams. And we truly got to see the lack of knowledge and preparation for a game here. This on your own part against Crimson. Not calcing to see if Crobat would live rocks plus sand. Not knowing literally anything about Serena, U-turn, Queenly Majesty. Mon that is guaranteed to come against your team. You have sand. Neglecting Gen 7 mechanics with Prankster versus Dark types. It was truly turn after turn. The best way to avoid situations like that is to have some mock battles. You have a front office. What you want to do is you want to ask people you know to play against you on Showdown, an easier medium to play on, with your opponent's team. Not only does that give you information into the matchup and what you're lacking or have too much of, but it also can reveal things that you don't know about prior to avoid them happening in the real game. You made some cool doubles, which we've gotten used to seeing from you now, but double switches aren't going to win you games every week. You need to offensively check things properly, and I felt the combination of Mons you brought didn't do that at all this week. I listened to your side, as you can tell, and I know you've been very busy and been getting a lot of help from Leo and a few others, VJ, and you need to get involved with the team building process on your own. You know your team and how to play it better than anyone. You drafted it. You have to start caring somewhat about your season, my friend. I don't want to keep you down here forever. I get that you're busy, but a GBA season is a commitment. You can ask A-Drive all about that.
I do want to say this, though. Callum did address this. He did say he wants to be building his own teams. He wants to be committed to this GBA season, and that's why I refuse to drop him any more than I did, because I believe him. I believe he wants to do better.
I hope so. I honestly hope so. I hope to see that in coming weeks. So we'll see what happens, but right now he falls to our number 11. I think that's the biggest drop that we've had all season. Realistically,
I was pretty crazy at the beginning, so I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, you were insane. But anyway, moving on to Lars and the Borussia Dawn fan. Lars made some solid early game plays, knowing that Dan wouldn't sack his Scizor to another HP Fire, clicking Shadow Ball in the Victini switch. That was amazing. That was brilliant, and I expect nothing less from Lars. Some unfortunate turns with the Magirna versus Clefable, and then that timeout with Dawn fan into EQ into Power Whip miss was insane. Lars played very patiently, waiting for the right moment to spin the rocks away after the Clefable went down, after that miss on Power Whip. Crawdon didn't even get to hit the field. He had decent checks to all of Dan's offense, and every time Clefable came in, it gave Lars a free switch into Magirna, which we said before. A great job, Lars, honestly. The one thing I have to critique Lars for this season is he still hasn't shown me that he knows how to use a certain mon. I think its name is Nihilego. That thing is a monster. While it was well in check this game, so good stuff not bringing it here. I feel like Lars is still learning how to use Nihilego, and I can't wait to see it just decimate a team that would just make my day, honestly. By the way, guys, that's a joke if you don't know. I just got destroyed by Nihilego by Lars himself this past weekend, so there's my plug for the week. What do you got on him?
Well, you beat me to the plug this time, but yeah. I actually didn't move Lars after a win, and I said I was a believer in Lars last week, and I'll stand by that, because the reason he didn't move is because I just have teams that have taken down, bigger fish. Like, Lars has taken down Dan, Tup, and Tom week 1, when I think Tom was still very much getting used to his team. So, I want to see Lars, like I said, I want to see him fry that big fish on the skillet. I want to see him move up and beat a top team. But Lars' team is so offensive, but at the same time, that can be a weakness. If Dan would have hit that Power Whip and Donphan would have went down, Terrakion and Haxorus could have pulled this game back. So he has to be very careful. And I just want to say, I watched Lars's prep video, and I literally wanted to, jump off of a bridge when I saw he brought 2 Life Orb Mons. He has a Toxapex, just bring Lumcraw. I don't care, anything but Life Orb. But yeah, he played very well. He made decent predictions with the Magirna, like you said, the Victini one. I still don't agree with Dan switching it in, but I mean, Lars predicted the middle ground play, and it worked out for him very well. And he played around the Victini's Life Orb very well, Roos stalling it a little bit at the end, and he just overall wore his team down. The lucky Dawn fan, we don't know exactly how that game would have played out. We say this a lot. We don't know how the game would have played out if that X turn had happened, but we do know that Lars did finish this game strong, and if he can ride this momentum, this seems to be a struggle for a lot of teams. We always say this. When teams get a win, we always say if they can ride this momentum, and they always seem to not be able to quite get off the ground to into where our top 4 or 5 coaches are. If Lars can ride this momentum, he will move up, but for now, I'm leaving him at 10, and I think that means we can move on to our boy, Crimson Seabat, at number 9. Do we agree on this one? I believe we do as well. Yes, so Crimson is number 9, and I will just say again, calmly, calm the fuck down, Crimson. Can we not just have a nice 1-2-3-0 win? Crimson needs to go big or go home, I guess, and he went big this week and picked up another 5-0 win, I believe, versus Callum. And yeah, his prep was actually really smart. Again, I've liked Crimson's prep throughout most of the season. The Torn set was very good offensively versus Callum. It gained momentum versus the things it can't beat, and it destroyed the rest of his team. The defensive Crook was very, very smart this game, but I really didn't understand the Colbur on the Slowbro just because T-Tar doesn't rely on knockoff, and that's usually why Colbur is so good, and you basically have to burn it since you can't really touch it back. I think Tango would have been better because of potential X's or X control, which does hit a little harder than Earthquake. But yeah, relying on burn, that was a little interesting, but he played it really well, played it safe versus Callum's team, which as we saw has paid off for Callum's opponents so far. So playing that well, keeping the pressure on, and eventually using his walls with the Baton Pass Sylveon, stuff like that, U-turn on Torn, to get favorable matchups with Serena, etc. And Callum couldn't do that. He would overpredict with the Rotom, and he basically just set it up for the Cobalion to sweep at the end. So applaud Crimson. You can do this, my dude. Like I said, Crimson, another coach, goes 1-1. I want to see him go like 2-1, 2-1. He's going 1-1 right now, but let's see if he can break it.
Yeah, now before the comment section explodes, I do have Crimson at number 8. I see that now. I know that Jar has Crimson at number 9, so don't freak out. Delete your comment. Delete, delete, delete. All right? Crimson this week, I feel like he took a page out of Tom's book. Never letting Callum get a second to breathe. He set up the Crobat kill so nicely, predicting the U-turn, setting up for yet another Cobalion sweep. Man, I love this Mon in Crimson's hands. I've never seen Cobalion do so much work. There's a reason that Crimson is an 8th, but has the top 2 kill leaders in the league at the moment on his team. Cobalion and Crocodile. I'm so glad to see him using those two. I can't even talk about it enough. Like, Crimson showed off his knowledge of mechanics, shutting down Callum's Sableye completely with the combination of Crook and Serena, negating the priority to hit them. Crimson is still up and down right now, like you said, so we need to see consistent winning to move him further up, but I'll say it again, he has been impressing me this season beyond belief. So, that's pretty much it for Crimson. We'll move on. We did take a lot of time on our bottom 8, I believe, so we are going to try to move a little bit quicker. Up above Crimson, we're going to talk about George next. So George, for me, unfortunately, we didn't get to see George's team builder and battle this week, but I will comment a little on the team he brought from what I saw. It seemed a little standard for George's level. The Tangaberry on the Mew was obvious by how willing he was to bring it in. I believe he pulled the same stunt against the Mega Pinsir at some point a couple seasons back with a Cobra Berry on Infernape. It's a good lure, but it's starting to be a little see-through. But maybe I'm just saying this because I watched Gator's side and he said Bugberry, I swear, like 9 times in 2 minutes. The Serp with HP Ground, and what I'm assuming was D-Pulse, was obvious as well. The Drapion was probably Shuka for EQ Latios. So I wouldn't be surprised if I'm right about that. Kiss came with Nasty Plot, which promised to put in a lot of work, but you basically say, hey Gator, this is a massive threat, you should probably put this on a timer. I don't know, again, it's hard to say anything negative without George's commentary and exact team, which if you guys are wondering, yes, we comb through every single team builder video when we need to. I only dropped George by 1 because I know what he can do, but I still need to keep seeing it, and I would like to see a battle video so I can actually review you correctly.
Yeah, so I actually have George at number 7 as well. And yeah, he didn't have a video up, so very hard for us to figure out exactly what his mindset and prep was, but I agree with basically everything Aster said. George never could gain a foot in this battle, in my opinion. Gator was just, like, keeping the momentum and I don't even know if it was momentum, he just always seemed to be on the front foot. We know Gator's a great player, but I think this game really showed it. The biggest thing for me, like you said, Togekiss destroyed Gator. Like, it just had a field day against his team, and he let it get toxic. Not only that, he let rocks get up. And basically, Togekiss was dead. Just like that. I actually think the biggest thing for me overall was just deciding to leave Serpent and letting that go down on the Mamoswine. That was your last win con. And you still had Suicune, I believe. So, again, it's hard to critique George when we don't know what George's thought process was, because I actually love sitting in front of George's videos and hearing how he team built, what his thought process was each turn, because he is a very good battler. That's why I'm keeping him at 7, even though he's a 3-3 team. So, I do want to see that video from George. I don't know if he's still on vacation or what from last week versus Mono. I know that was a thing. But we do have to drop him because he did lose to Gator, and I believe that gives me a nice little segue into Gator, who we're going to talk about next, and this is the biggest difference of the week. I have Gator at number 6. So Aster took a reach on Tom last week, jumped him a lot of spots. It's my turn to shine. I'm going to jump Gator a ton of spots because I truly believe in Gator. He's been 2-1 lately, and his one loss in his last 3 games is against Mono, who we both identify as like one of the top 3 players in the league at least from the whole season. So I'm putting him all the way up at 6. I'm believing in Gator. All right, his prep, very solid. The AV Mamoswine put in so much work, and he's using Mamoswine so well. He's not just bringing the Adamant Life Orb Mamoswine everyone thought he would bring each week. He is bringing other Mamoswine sets that have a lot of potential in his matchups. He's actually looking at the matchups and bringing the best Mamoswine set, and I love that. Sometimes when we have our favorite Mons on the team, we do have a tendency to run the same sets. I love how he played the Latios, believe it or not, just by clicking Draco on the Togekiss, because he never revealed his specs. And that came in a little bit in the late game when George probably didn't know the item of the Latios because it had just been dropping Dracos and not wanting to get T-Waved by the Togekiss and switching out. And then as the Lati just cleaned up the game by just spamming T-Ball versus his team, it was like that. He played it, so he didn't reveal his item. He played straightforward with it, and it never cost him. Like, that's why you don't always need to play aggressive, guys. If you can just play safe and keep your win cons in check, like Gator did, unlike Dan and Geo, who we talked about, you can win games very easily. So that's why I'm taking my risk on Gator this week. He took down the former GBA champion. I'm going to jump Gator up this week.
Yeah, you jumped him up 5 spots. I'm a little bit more conservative when it comes to that. We do have another huge jump coming up. You guys probably see it already on the slide that we're on, but Gator, for me, like, yes, he had an amazing performance. What I really like about Gator, I actually love this guy. No BM, no BM. Did you hear that at the end of the video?
Yeah.
Still ends up critting the Suicune in the end. Like, let's be honest, that didn't matter. But honestly, I always used to just like watch his plays, listen to his commentary to know what play he was gonna make next. But I actually really like Gator as a person. He's really cool, and he just played a solid game, man. He recognized how much damage the Specs Latios did to George's team and played around the Drapion so well, using his Pyukumuku as a baton pass pivot. It takes a really good player to be able to grab 3 kills with a Latios against a team that brought a Fairy and a Pursuit Trapper. He got out of there with a 2-0 against one of the best players this league has ever seen. Even though I feel George's prep was a little lackluster, and we'll kind of get, we've already covered that, right? So
yeah,
we'll know more when his actual battle video comes out and his team builder and everything, but I still think Gator brought excellent sets. The one thing I will say is that Scarfed Heracross might have been a better bring this game, just because it outspeeds the Superior, the Mew, the Mismagius, all those speed tiers, and it really would have gotten to put in work. I do understand his logic, though, behind Bandit, but either way, great job, dude. We both moved you up a few spots this week. Jar, quite a few. Myself,
I'm putting my faith in you, Gator.
Yeah,
don't let me down.
Keep showing up, keep winning your games, and I'll keep moving you up. I know you're playing against Old Man Tup next week, however, so you might not move up too many spots if you do pull out a win.
Feels like a good week to bet on Gator.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Moving on to our next position in at my number 6. I believe you have Tom at number 8. Now,
yes.
Tom, I don't understand something here. I dropped him down 1 spot. I'm just gonna say, and you probably have this on your notes, we have not consulted at all. But why no Darmanitan? Seriously? Tapu Bulu, Skarmory, Jolteon, Gudra, Porygon Z, Sneasel, Uxie, Scolipede. I just named 8 Mons out of 11 on John's team that the Darmanitan, with 3 moves, can destroy, being U-Turn, Superpower, and Flare Blitz. That's it. His only true stop to that is, to a Darm, is Milotic. And you have a Thunderous Theory in. This was one week where I felt like Tom bringing straight offense really hurt him because he had to switch around on things like knockoff and especially rock switch-ins with no hazard removal, and then the P2 not being EV to outspeed Milotic at neutral 0 investment when it was the most likely thing to carry Toxic on John's team, and he had Substitute. I don't know. I really do feel like that Darmanitan could have made the matchup he really wanted with his offense, and perhaps Hitmonlee over Celesteela, for example, just to spin away to make sure the rock stayed away for his Thunderous. I know Tom had a not-so-great matchup to begin with, but I feel that the prep was definitely not there this week, in my opinion. I'm a little disappointed. I still believe in the Sharpedos, though, which is why I'm only dropping them 1 spot this week, as did you, I believe, right? You did drop them only 1 spot, so there you go.
So, you could say I have the same amount of belief in them as Aster, but I dropped Tom because, like he said, Darmanitan. I have that literally the first thing in my notes. Why no Darmanitan? And it would have put in a lot of work for the team John brought. Whether he's your Kryptonite or not, Tom got tossed this week. A 5-0, and a Jolteon picked up 4 kills against a team with a Nidoqueen, a Thundurus Therian, and a Zydoge. A Jolteon picked up 4 kills against a team with 3 electric immunities, and Jolteon is not an electric type that gets coverage. So there was some misplaying going on Tom's part. I agree the matchup wasn't in his favor, but like I said, I ranked John's team the best team in the league back at the draft analysis, so yeah, I think John's team generally has a good matchup. Dual Life Orb again, so triggered. I don't think the fans can comprehend how much we hate Life Orb. And all you self-proclaimed comedians, now is the time. You can go to the comments, make a drinking game joke or whatever the hell you want to write. Because good job, you are funny. The P2 set was interesting, and it could have beat most of John's team. But like Aster said, not speed creeping that Milotic when Milotic with Toxic is pretty much a staple on Milotic. DD Doge was very good. I think his biggest thing was, like you said earlier, basically not keeping up his momentum with the combination of Thundy. And if he didn't have Darm, which I think he should have, Zydoge. Zydoge actually did a lot of work to John's team if he could have worn down the Milotic, which I think we're both in kind of agreement. Milotic is amazing. So wearing it down is very crucial for any game. But I think the biggest thing, no Darm, P2 poor speed creeping, and not wearing down the Milotic for Zydoge, because Zydoge was his best chance to beat John's team that he brought with a DD up. So I think that's basically it for me. I don't have much more to say. So I think we're going to move on. And we actually get to talk about Steve-O next. So, very, very interesting game for Steve-O this week. Wait, is this Steve-O
from Jackass?
Yeah, same guy. Necro Steve-O. So, I didn't drop him too much because there isn't really anyone separating themselves enough for me to want to put them over him. And that's kind of the point I'm at. Nobody else besides our top 5 really seems like they're breaking away from the pack, you know. So, he lost to Envy, which is important to note because we both have Envy as one of the best players in the league at the moment. So I can't drop him too much. Like I said, you have to take into account who people win and lose to. So we put Envy in top 3, so that is a loss we can give Steve-O a little credit on. So I think his team matchup was definitely subpar this week. I think Envy actually had a really good team matchup between the likes of the Kingdra specifically and Dragonite especially. The Dragonite set Envy brought, we'll get into later. Great versus Steve-O's team. So Swellow continues to show it is the biggest offensive threat on that team, and maybe that's part of the problem. That a Swellow, which is a Mon that was NU last gen, is not into this gen, and it is very frail, weak to rocks, is the biggest offensive threat. It hits hard as hell, don't get me wrong, but that might say something about the team. But I think the biggest thing was Steve-O just got put on the back foot turn 1 by the Kingdra, lost his Dragon immunity turn 3, and basically, the biggest thing was, this is another mistake I've made. A lot of the GBA coaches, I see mistakes that I've made in the past. In this new generation, Generation 7, there is a thing called Z-moves. And how you could play draft format in the past was you could build something that can take, you can calc it, it can take any 2 hits or 1 hit, like a Dragonite going for Outrage against your Hippo, you know you can live it, click Ice Fang, break his multi-scale, and he's down in quick attack, swallow range, or whatever. This is a new gen. Switching in walls on things that you presume are ultimate counters does not work anymore when those are the designated Z-Mons of your opponent's team, as we saw this week. And that caused Steve-O to basically lose the game right there. I think that was the turning point in the match where the Hippo just dropped, and Steve-O's chances dropped with it. So you have to play this gen a lot differently around Z-Mons, and you have to scout for those Z-moves. So if it has the Dragonite, keep your Klefki around, maybe scout for that Z-move next time. It's just the way we have to play now. Z-moves are very good in Draft League format. No one is denying that. And that's why we only allow 1 Mon to have them, and you have to be very careful with your switch-ins to Z-Mons.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Necro Steve-O a little bit differently. I'm starting to notice the differences in prep between Cooper and Necro. We compared them last week, I believe, but there was nothing that really stood out to me as innovative? There we go. This week, as it would normally.
Innovative, Aster.
Yeah, with Cooper, you would always see weird sets, and they'd always end up working. Like we saw that Klefki in his final game. That was just amazing. With the full incense, the prep was effective, yes, but it was still very standard, and I think you're gonna need a little bit more than that to beat Envy. All in all, I think Steve-O still played pretty well, considering he kind of just expected Muck to drop at the end. And I don't blame him. I probably would have done the same because Facade kills any max HP variant of Muck. But as we know, MV is a little bit smarter, and we'll get into that in a bit. But I only moved the Jasmine down one spot this week, mostly to make room for our number 4, who's been showing up to his matches with good prep since the week against, who else? MV as well. He still has to prove himself, Necro, but his predecessor left him with a solid enough record for us to leave him in the top 5 for now. So, moving on. Speaking of our number 4, we're going to get right into him, and I am very proud to say that we have John and the New Orleans Pelipers in at number 4. I saw John's prep. It was very solid. The Fight EMZ Nape was great for Vaporeon, even though it didn't come. I love the Goodra. It covered everything nicely. 4 switches. Quick Feet Jolteon, guys, was really smart for P2. And not to mention the Toxic Spikes. Not that those actually changed anything, because Jolteon is just, well, fast. But John even showed me that he got the old John back this week. Like, that's how I'm feeling. Willing to make plays when he's in the mid-game, and even when he's in total control to pull himself even further. For example, the HP Ice play on the switch to Thundy. That's honestly thinking 3 turns ahead, knowing that the Thundy can come in and heal, and that Tom probably thinks the P2 can come in and get Volt Absorb as well. Or so Tom thought. Like, really solid, John. If you're watching this again this week, we saw your comment last week, by the way, and you stuck to your promise of playing more like John of seasons past. If you can do it again next week and jump to a 5-2 record, I'll be really, really impressed. Because Crimson is on something this season. Either way, you jumped 4 spots for both of us this week, and you land at number 4.
Yeah, I have to agree with basically everything you said. John's prep was on point this game, and that, we say 60, even 70% of the Battle Sun games is all about your prep. And we've seen John just step it up these last few weeks, and we are going to reward him. Like we said, if teams can get on a roll and separate themselves from the pack, they will jump in power rankings. John is the definition of that. Ever since his loss to MV, he has stepped his game up to the John we are used to. He's getting used to his team. He's bringing the right sets. He's not over-predicting when he doesn't have to, and when he is predicting, he's getting it right. Those are huge things for me. He played it safe this game, but it was very smart because his prep allowed him to play it safe. He wasn't over-predicting losing every 50-50 like he was versus MB. He kept his composure against interesting stuff like the Porygon 2 set, which did have a lot of potential, played around the endgame beautifully, and I just don't have much to critique John on this week. He played well, prepped well, picked up a 5-0 and a win this week, so we will see if he can keep his roll going and maybe even move up into the top 3. But that's all I have to say for John. Only compliments for John this week. But I think we can just roll right into number 3. And poor MV, you know, he plays solidly. He preps solidly. Beats somebody we both have in the top 5. And still can't break into the top 2. Because we just have our top 2. But pretty much both of us have agreed on that at this point. But I would just like to address one thing, MV. Because a Muck is not one-shot by a Swellow does not mean you have a wall. That's all. MV learned from the Stevo's predecessors in this game, bringing something that their team and their walls can't switch into. That is the weakness of the team Coop drafted that Stevo now owns. And he did it with the likes of Kingdra, which that set was brilliant. MV, by the way, burned halves attack. So when a player up hits a Kingdra, having attack is a big difference in the count.
I have that in my notes. I'm going to talk about that. Keep going, keep going.
Yeah. So Dragonite destroyed his team. That Dragonite set was absolutely beautiful. I didn't know Dragonium Z Outrage did that much to a Hippowdon. It just busted through his team. You don't get locked into the Outrage, which is amazing. And he just did what he needed to do, and unless MV falters, he is going to stay right where he is. MV, I'm sure if you just pick up 6 more walls, though, I can move your grade up into the top 2. We'll see what we can do, and you can get back into your house. But, yeah, for now, you're number 3.
Alright, so speaking about what I cut Jar off on before, just so you guys know, here's some inside info. We were in a call with MV on Friday night, and right after he played his match with Necro Stevo, he told us that his Klefki did 25% to his Kingdra with a Play Rough. And we couldn't figure out why. And MV was just sitting there making us ponder. And he's like, I don't know, guys. I'm sure it did about 25%. And then when we saw the game on Sunday, we realized that Klefki was burned by Scald. So we gave him a little bit of crap for that. Just a little something for you guys. I know I'm a horrible storyteller. I'm sorry.
Wow, Aster, you have such inside information.
let me stick to what I'm decent at for a sec here. Envy did a great job at noticing that his opponent had nothing for crit draw. That's short for critical hit king draw for all of you newcomers to Pokemon.
Oh my god, you need to leave.
Yes, I do. Envy was insightful enough to EV his Muck to take an Adamant Facade from Swallow after Rocks or a Spike, which is insane to me. Here's a little stat for you analytic nerds out there like myself. Alolan Muck has come to every game that Envy has won, and it has died a grand total of once. So, new favorite Mon, Envy? You gonna change that mascot for the 3rd time this gen? I think so. It may seem like I'm not acknowledging Envy's win because I did drop him down 1 spot. I'm into where Jar has him, but I only did that because I had no choice but to bump Chimp up to number 2, as you guys can see on your screens. I still would like to see Envy beat one of the top 2, but guess what, guys? This is Envy's schedule for the 2nd half of the season. Tom, Old Man Tup, Steve again, Crimson, John, and Callum. I honestly believe that if Envy continues to play how he has been, he will sweep the rest of the season with the matchups he has. Lucky man, but he deserves the top 3 all day, every day. Moving on. Right. As I said, you guys can see that we have Chimp in at number 2. I actually don't have any notes for Chimp, and because I kind of wanted to freelance this, Chimp begged me. He begged me to put him in number 1. Well, I'll just say that right now. He knows that the Toxic missed, okay? He's aware that the Toxic missed on the Cofagrigus, but his Alomomola got crit, man, by a Dark Pulse. It was so unfair. His Aloe got crit. It balanced it out. It was justice. It's all good. So Chimp was able to take down our number 1, the guy who we have not moved since the very first week of this power ranking series, and he's the first person to be able to do it, and he did it very well. Chimp is scary, and Jar has said it before. He's the kind of player you just don't want to mess with because he recognized that he had probably one of the best lures for that Buzzwole in the game, which is a Gligar that sets up a Swords Dance and goes for an Aerial Ace and knocks out the Buzzwole after taking a Nice Punch, because I believe he was still EV Light. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jar.
I believe it was EV Light.
Yeah, there you go. So, and then just the way that he played out the rest of the game. Of course, I'm not going to discredit the fact that the Toxic miss mattered, but Chimp has been getting lucky. We said it last week. He just keeps getting a little bit lucky every week, and it just keeps pulling him through, and he just dominated that game. I'm going to talk about a little faux pas from his opponent later when we get to him, but I'm going to let Jar talk about Chimp because he does have a lot of notes on him.
Ahem. But Jar and Aster, Chimpack beat Mono 5-0. Can you fuckos not even read? First of all, no, we cannot. We both struggle with that. That's mean. However, I stand by Mono at 1. Because if you watch the game, Chimp and him both played very well. But that Toxic miss was what Mono needed. Yes, he hit a few other Toxics, but none were as important as the one on the Cofagrigus. And that heavily shifted the game into Chimp's favor. And I'm not saying he would have won if the Toxic had hit. But Mono and him are both 5-1 now. So I'm going to wait and see which one missteps first to the end of the season before I move Mono out. Because remember, Chimpact also has a loss, guys. Chimpact and him are both 5-1. And even though this game was a 5-0, it was not a 5-0 game. No. This game was a lot closer than a 5-0 would suggest. Chimp's prep, I think Chimp also had team matchup. I'd like to address that. I think the combination of Kyurem and Thundy, Mono addressed it, destroy him. They just absolutely, he has no switch-ins. He could have brought the Florges, but he has things like the Foragers and stuff like that that can just capitalize and get this hazards up, spin, all that crap. And Chimp really showed why I would like to think I was one of the first people to bring Alomomola like back into draft meta, because I drafted it like pretty early and I just loved having that water type. It is the best wish passer in the game. Takes any hits, regenerator, gets its health back without even having to catch its wish, and it's so good. It kept his Thundy alive so many times. The Cofagrigus set was smart to prevent the Zygarde from 6-0ing him because he did recognize he had a lot of setup walls. But Chimp, he played really well, and like I said, the game was closer than a 5-0, and a little bit of hacks made it very tough to judge which player was actually doing better in this game. But we get to move now to Mono at number 1, and I know we're going to catch a little bit of heat for this, because Mono did lose. This is the first loss he suffered, and I would just like to say I actually had to change my notes this week and write some shit down, because Mono, I did not want to move down because he did everything he could in that match. I think a few missteps, obviously. Like, he would have won the game if he played it perfectly. We all would. But I left him in number 1 because the Toxic Mist made a big hill to climb. His prep on the Zygarde set was very, very good. I think the Roserade should have come more offensively. That's the one thing I will get on Mono's prep. I think that should have been an offensive Roserade. It did a lot of work to his team. But one thing I will say is that Mono is on thin ice now. Before, Mono was on a pillar. He's now back down to earth, guys. He is on thin ice. He missteps one more time, he will lose his number 1 spot. So, Aster, you can go ahead. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, I don't know how often he wants to keep coming first for 2 guys at once, but anyway. I do think that, personally for me, I think the big turn in this game was not even the Toxic Miss. I think it was not going for HP Ice on the Gligar. Because this is something that I've noticed about Mono, and it's only happened twice now. It has only happened twice that I have seen him lose, and that I am able to identify why he loses. I won't go into too much detail because I don't want to give his opponents any kind of advantage moving on into the future, but you know what kind of player you're playing against, right, Mono? You know that Gligar is probably going to be a lure for your Buzzwole, because anything outside of a flying move, and Buzzwole can eat anything, and it gets access to Ice Punch. That should have been quite obvious, and while I understand that HP Ice is probably not a 2-hit KO, you're better off getting off a lot of damage on that and keeping your Buzzwole alive for a little bit longer, because that thing could have definitely put in work on Chimp's walls if he ended up getting Toxics on everything, rather than being forced to attack what was in front of him in the Cofagrigus at some point in the game. So if Buzzwole was still alive, I think that game would have played out a little bit differently. Obviously, we won't talk about it more, but the Toxic Miss sucks. And I'm sorry, but it happens to everybody. So, everybody's going to get unlucky at some point. Steve is like on the receiving end of all the bad luck this season. But everybody's going to experience it at some point or another, and it will come back to haunt them. But it's so tight between the two, between Mono and Chimp. Like, it's so hard to put one over the other at this point, which is why we're keeping Mono at first, because he was originally at first. So, like Jar said, the first to misstep, and they'll drop. If that happens to be Mono, then we will see the Philadelphia Scizors up at number 1. That's all I have to say.
And I think this week has just added a whole new layer to this GBA season, because at one point we were talking about how Mono is just like this untouchable player right now. Now we have a bunch of teams at 3-3. We have a few who are coming back down to earth like NecroStevo. You got MV, Chimp, and Mono battling for one. This season is developing layers upon layers of a playoff race, a number 1 race, and this season just got a whole lot more exciting with this week, in my opinion. So that's going to do it for us here for week 6. Got it right. Aster, high five.
Yeah.
Give it to me. Right there. Yes. All right. So week 6. We hope you guys tune in. Aster, take us out.
All right, guys. That's it for us. Make sure to hit that like button down below. Leave your comments in the comment section down below, of course, as well. Let us know what you thought of our power rankings and how you would power rank everybody. Make sure to subscribe to the GBA channel, as well as all the other coaches who will, of course, be in the description as well. And we will catch you guys next week.
Later.
Ciao.